Welcome to Protea Conversations, the podcast where leadership in business and accounting isn't just discussed, it's explored. I'm your host, Zane Stevens, and thank you for joining me as we delve into the minds of some of the most influential leaders in the industry. Our journey is one of discovery, from unraveling the unique stories that shaped our guest careers to invaluable advice that fueled their success. We're here to provide you with simple, actionable advice to accelerate your career and personal growth. Whether you're a budding professional or a seasoned executive, these conversations are designed to offer insight and perspectives that resonate with everyone. So tune in, engage, and be inspired as we build better leaders together. Welcome to Protea Conversations. Today we're thrilled to have Molly Varangkounh, the Chief Sanity Officer, dedicated to helping leaders break the cycle of redundancy and achieve remarkable business transformation. Molly specializes in giving leaders the courage and tools to reimagine their strategies and drive significant value in their business. Join us as we dive into how Molly empowers her clients to see their challenges from a fresh perspective, implement innovative solutions, and create systems for sustainable growth. Molly, thanks for joining Protea Conversations.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's interesting. I always like to reminisce on how I met the various guests, and we're just like the typical hey, you're on LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn, nice to meet you, let's have a conversation. And you reached out to me, and we had a couple of calls, and we've sort of stayed in contact. I mean, it's going back quite a few years right now, and it's now great to be able to sit down and learn a little bit more about you and your career. So thanks for making the time for me.
Yeah. I was thinking about the same thing, and a lot of times our LinkedIn connections are just digital, and so it's always great to connect with someone more personally, even if it's through digital, but to have an actual conversation.
Yeah, and it also reminded me a little bit, like I used to once in a while just put out there, hey, if anybody would just love to chat and connect in person, we should do it. And those worked once in a while, and then they sort of faded off. And I'm like, I missed having those random conversations with people, because at times, you fall into really great conversations, and what ends up being, interesting relationships, not close personal ones, but good enough professional ones that I always like when I do see your name pop up, like, I know what Molly's busy with right now.
Yep, that's right.
Well, let's get into it and sort of discuss, your career.
Sure.
And I always like to find out for people, because accounting nowadays gets such a bad rap and nobody wants to do it and nobody's trying to study it. How did you make the decision to go into the world of accounting?
It's actually kind of a funny one. So I actually went to business school pretty much because that was the major that required the least amount of science. And so I was not, that was what my main motivation was. And then just kind of went in there with an open mind, figured I'll just take some classes and see what pops up. And then I was sitting in a classroom. I remember the hall. It was in Curtis Hall it was at Iowa State University. And Jim Kurtenbach was our professor. And he just talked about, Iowa State is a big engineering school. And he would talk to all of us, but the engineering majors, he said, to all you Con-E majors out there, so construction engineering, all you Con-E majors out there, someday when you guys own your own business, you're going to need to know this. And that kind of caught my attention. And I was not a Con-E major or anything engineering, but I really kind of perked up and started listening to the things he had to say. And then it just kind of made sense. So I understood it. It became clear to me that accounting was the language of business. And I figured if I can learn this, then I can work my way into about anything. So I went into accounting and didn't ever change my major after that.
What was your plan before that? Like, did you have some other goal that you're after, or you just sort of running life and said, let's see what happens?
Yeah, it was a little bit more like that. Like college was the next step, but that was not negotiable. It was just, I didn't, I was the oldest in my family, so I didn't really know much about what it meant to go away to college. And so I just thought, I'm going to go figure out how to live away from my parents first, and then I'll figure out the college thing from there.
That's great. So you got on the accounting bandwagon and off you went, and, obviously created a career for it. Sort of what happened from there? You got the degree, now you got to go be an accountant.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, I decided to study for the CPA exam, and then I actually got my first job. It was in a public accounting firm, and I was lucky enough that I started in the time where we weren't as busy. So in my off hours, when I wasn't working with client work, I was able to study for the CPA exam at that point. So I did end up passing that. And So I worked at a public accounting firm and then moved to Principal Financial Group and worked in the investment accounting group there. And in the meantime, my dad had said, it was right before I graduated from college, and he said, you should come back and work for the family business. And I said, what my official answer was, I think I need to get some other experience. And what I really meant was, I don't want to live in small town Iowa. I want to live in more of a college type town, a little bit larger. And then along the way, I called him between the public accounting job and principal, and I said, I think I'm ready to come back. And he said, shoot, I just hired somebody. So we kind of had our dance. And then finally, we connected, and I came back and worked. And that was actually when I started having kids. So being near grandparents is a little more important. And I came back and worked in our family's business and started as a low man on the totem pole in the accounting team, and just kind of happened to be curious enough to ask questions and try to learn more about it. It's a tractor parts company, so I had zero interest in working there when I was in high school or anything. But it really became a love of one of the loves of my life. So I spent a lot of years there, became his right-hand person, and then actually ran the company as president for 8 years. Ultimately, I was just kind of hit a point where family dynamics in a family business kind of got the wheels turning on, is this where I want to spend the next 20 years? And decided to take another path along the way.
I mean, family business is always interesting, especially, I can't imagine a tractor parts business. I don't think, I'm trying to rack my brain, like, what would even go into that? I mean, there's some sales, there's obviously some logistics, there's everything that would go into any parts business. So that shouldn't seem that weird. It's I guess, a little funny because it's a small town Iowa and it's tractor parts. So
that was one of
feels like a little bit of a movie scene, right?
Yeah. And, we were big enough. We had about 120 employees. And so we had multiple departments, but we were small enough. I got to wear a lot of different hats. And so, I started in accounting, but then I was able to be a part of sales and marketing and building we didn't build our website, but we built the thing associated with it. And then the whole production flow of the parts, and got to really just be a part of every tiny little department of a small business. So it was really fun. A lot of great experience.
So I would say a little bit bigger than small, but smaller than big, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting that you have start at the bottom as well. I do like that concept that your dad was like, no special treatment, just here's an entry-level job, good luck.
Yep, exactly. We kind of carried that through my daughters. I have 3 daughters, and all 3 of them worked there, and we required all of them to interview with someone that wasn't us. And it was really pretty cute that every single one of them, they got very nervous, just like you should, for an interview. And I remember, can't remember which one of my girls, but one of them was like, I hope I get the job. I'm like, I hope so too. So
don't mess this one up.
Right.
It should be a slam dunk. So you just got to be.
Yeah. We tried to lean in on that, but we made them practice and really tried to help them learn some life skills.
Yep.
Because whether they decided to work at the family business with tractor parts someday or not, that didn't matter. Our job was to help prepare them for the future.
Yeah, that's great. What was your dad's explanation to you when you first took on the job of this, as a low entry level job? How did he explain it to you?
He didn't. It was just, because he was on the sales side of things. So accounting was the last thing that he cared about. And in fact, his mantra was, I just figure if you take care of the sales, the rest takes care of itself. And then I made it my 20-year mission to prove that that's not quite the case. And, and so that's part of what my role was to help kind of. Our business started in 1978 when my grandpa was a mechanic. And so we had to reinvent ourselves. So I was there when we were in the 30-year-old business. And so we'd picked up a lot of loyalty, a lot of long-term employees, a lot of really good processes, but some of them had gone a little bit stale. And so part of my role was to help really look at it from an outsider's perspective. And so I ended up having to tell my dad more like, hey, have you thought about this? Or we really became sparring partners on how to take the business from mom and pop shop to actual manufacturing organization.
Yeah, it's a good lesson for like business owners out there as well. Like you hear that all the time, right? Hey, sales, we'll deal with it with sales. So I'll sell myself out of the problem. It'll be
Mm-hmm.
fine. But if you don't look at other things, like especially in the manufacturing place, like costs can quickly scale up
Yeah.
under your nose, and you're used to getting 60, 70, 100% profit margins on your gross margin levels, and you're like, oh, I'm down to 30%.
Mm-hmm.
What happened? Where did that money go? Like, it doesn't matter how much I sell right now. There's not, I can't cover my overheads. And,
Right.
you can't just ignore accounting. You obviously, you don't want accounting to, you know, wag the dog or whatever the saying is, right?
Yep.
But
Yep.
it's important. Like, if you do want to make that step up, you got to know your numbers. You got to pay attention to your numbers, and you got to use those numbers in a very effective way to run your business.
Yep. Exactly. And knowing I had to really adjust some of my delivery and communication because, again, my dad, he didn't care about it. He cared about the end result, but a lot of the details in the middle, that wasn't, I was just going to sound like Charlie Brown's teacher,
Mm-hmm.
and so I had to figure out how to present the information in a way that was easily digestible. And I mean, he had a lot of things on his mind, so I had to make it a quick impact. And so I did a lot through visual charts and color coding and things like that that helped make it a quick glance. He knew what was going on. And that's one of the things that I still do to this day for people that I work with is try to create quick visual experiences that help them demystify what their numbers are telling them, because the numbers are not that they're not always that complicated, but they can be overwhelming to people that aren't used to working through them. So our job is to help simplify them so they understand what the numbers are telling them.
Yeah, it's always interesting that, it's communication is difficult to start
Mm-hmm.
with. Then communicating a topic that you feel passionately about, like the numbers of a business, to a person who's like, they're important, but I don't really want to hear about them. Or, in times, and maybe not your dad, but a lot of people are scared of the numbers, right? They don't want to know because they know there's truth in those numbers. So if I don't hear them, see them, pay attention to them, well, then it's just as rosy as I think it is, right? It is a little bit difficult, and trying to figure out how you communicate to people. And great, you're using visual. There's other people, like, you put a colorful chart in front of them, they'll tell you to like beep off, right? Like,
Yep,
it's trying to figure out how do you constantly adapt your communication to the person in front of you to
exactly.
make sure that they will actually pay attention and not give the Charlie Brown teacher, which
Yeah.
I've now going on wildly in the back of my
Yep.
head. I can just hear it as well. So I mean, how do you teach that? How do you learn that skill to be able to adjust your message to the person in front of you?
I mean, you have to get good at observing things that are, body language and watching facial expressions. If when people start to slump back in their chair when you're talking, that's not a good sign. Or some people start to get a little more agitated but they'll also, if you hit the right mark, you have to try a few different things. And when you hit the right mark, they sit up a little bit taller, their eyes get a little bigger, and then the conversation actually happens. So, I've tried to figure out ways to shortcut that. And sometimes asking people, how best do you learn? How do you want to get information? But that's not something everyone is as capable of articulating. And sometimes it's really just a matter of trial and error. And once you see something that hits the mark, then do more of that.
Yeah, and there's other people who just believe they can read a set of financials, right? They're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I took an accounting course once in high
Mm-hmm.
school when I was, sick with flu, so I know how to read it. But they don't. I think the skill there is picking up that they don't really understand what you're saying. One, like, don't be arrogant enough that my way is the right way, and you got to adjust. And also, I guess there's some more lessons in there. Like, sometimes these can be difficult conversations. How much harder can it be, like, trying to tell your father, like, hey, you need to pay attention because it might not be as good as you think it is a really tough conversation. And we get those scary clients, those scary bosses who, you have to adjust the conversation to it. Is there any advice that you could give us from having these tough, difficult conversations with your dad that we could take into some of our own scary conversations in life?
Sure. I think one of the things that I've really tried to do is even before the scary conversations, work on building a relationship, a relationship that's built on trust. And you have to at least have a few wins in there in building that trust level so that they know that when you have something to talk to them about, that trust is already there. So that foundation of trust is pretty important. And then along the way, kind of taking temperatures on, hey, if and when, we have to talk about something difficult, how do you want me to handle that? And asking for a little bit of permission on how, having them help give you the keys. Some people will say, just hit me with it, hit me with it, and we'll talk it through. But their actions don't always completely align with that. And then also I tend to try to make sure I'm aligning my clients with how I operate. If it's somebody that wants to completely avoid things, that's not going to be the right client fit for me. And so, I try to help make sure in that discovery process we understand I'm seeking the outside perspective, or I'm seeking the things that are going to help make me better. And that's going to also be where I align with the client work that I do, is somebody that knows that there's better. They just can't quite figure it out on their own, and they just need to figure out someone that can help them sort through it.
Yeah, great advice. So 20 years in a family business, you know, culminating in president. How do you go from entry-level accountant to top of the rung? Like, how does that even happen? You hear about it all the time, but not many people get to do it.
Yeah.
So what's the secret? What did you do to set yourself up for that success?
I really didn't ever I didn't do it intentionally. I'm a curious person. I just happened to ask questions. I was trying to learn different things. I'm innately, I always think that there's a better way, no matter what, even if it's good, can we make process improvements? And so, I'm curious by nature. I asked questions, and then before I knew it, I ended up being invited to meetings. I'm sure a big part of it was, I was my dad's kid. He owned the business. So, I will say that there were advantages that I probably shared, but as a company, we valued curiosity and continuous improvement. So I think that was one of the things that I did. I listened and really tried to understand what the other person's perspective was, because not a single person rolls out of bed in the morning saying, I can't wait to go screw up somebody else's day. And so I went into it assuming the best out of people, and then trying to understand, how did we get here? And then really I asked questions to learn, understand, and then even asked questions to solve. And anybody that worked with me would probably say that I didn't give many direct orders, really, ever. In my 20 years that I was there, it was a lot more about asking the questions and trying to collectively solve for a problem that we all see, we all understand. We just can't quite get to the solution when we're on an island, but we can do it together.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing from you is that you understood that people had a lot of good experience. Understood people had very specific skills. One, you want to learn from them, so you asked the questions, but two, you trusted that they could at least help you towards the right answer.
Absolutely.
And that is, collaborative leadership. We all talk about it all the time, right? You can go on LinkedIn, you can go Google it. There's 1,000 articles on it. And it's easy to say, and maybe even write about it. ChatGPT might be able to help me write an article about it tomorrow. But it is still really difficult to do, right? Because to be a good leader, you've got a little bit of alpha in you. You have to be wanting, you want to be able to take that situation. How do you set yourself up in a way that you are so open to people's ideas? Like, you said you had advantages, but you had to use those advantages, right? You could have just sat back on your laurels and said, I'll be fine. My dad's got me sorted, but you didn't.
Right.
You stayed curious. You stayed asking the questions. You kept pushing the envelope, kept pushing the boundaries. You wouldn't become president if people didn't want to work for you, right? So how do we set ourselves up to be that collaborative leader? How do we build the skills to make sure that we're truly listening, truly understanding what people are saying, and using that information to drive our decision?
I think I was really lucky. I had a a gal that I worked with. Technically, she reported to me, but she was more of my mentor than anybody. So I was really lucky to have that person that we could have outside of the meeting preparation conversations. And she was able to even push back on me on like, are you sure you want to handle it that way? And so we put a lot of time and effort into preparing for the meeting and then being in, facilitating the meeting with a purpose. And then we really put a lot of energy into the follow up and follow through. And, that was one of the things that so often it's easy to go to a meeting and think that that's where it all happens. But the prep work and the post work are really where, you build the trust with the team around you. And because, a lot of times I remember a lot of the people that I was working with, they were almost like, yeah, we've heard this before. Nobody's going to follow through on it. And so I made it a pretty important thing that if we said we're going to do it, let's make sure we do it. Let's follow through on our commitments and let's make sure that happens. And I think when you move in that direction and people see that what you say is what you will do, your words and actions align, then they start to open up on bigger things and really help, instead of you having to create the assignments that need to happen, they start bringing them. And it's like, I think we need to try this. And then that's where things start turning on their own.
Yeah, I mean, follow through builds trust at the end of the day, right? It's like if people see that if you've got words and then you follow through with action, they can trust in you, they can get behind you, they can know they can come to you with something and we can implement it and move forward. And that is important. I mean, I think we all have a ton of ideas. There's always things running around meetings. But if we're not following through, those meetings become really just, tick the box exercise and nobody really cares about them. Everybody gets a little disengaged from the business and that's when things really start to struggle. So that's really great advice. And sort of, you can listen all you like, but if you're not following through after listening, then why were you even listening in the first place?
Right, exactly. And another thing is to be calm under pressure, or if somebody brings you something that was a mistake, they didn't do it on purpose. And if I remember there being times where like people would come in my office, like, they were scared to tell me something. And I think one of the things I hope that I did, my intention was always to just say, okay, well, what's plan B or what's our solution? And I know that the first few times that happened, there was just a sense of relief, like, oh, good. That was a really scary thing to walk through those doors and have to say, I screwed up or this happened or whatever. And you also have to build a sense of trust when things aren't going well, because then there's not a fear of having to hide something. And then it really just continues to build that foundation.
Yeah, fear of failure in a business can really be a major crutch because then people are on their toes all the time. They feel like they're working, just gonna, like, who knows when somebody's gonna go off. I can't do anything wrong. Where, let's not mess up big time. Like, let's not create really big issues. But if there is a problem, let's be proactive. Let's talk about it. Let's find the solution. Let's fix it. It's so much better than, I made a mistake. Let me cover it up because I don't want to be shot at.
Right.
I think it's difficult to bring into a business, though. You did it through actions. You said, well, let me hear you out. What's your solution? How are we going to fix it? And that's great. But it's still a really tough culture to develop. Outside of just, showing and living the culture, is there anything else that you did to sort of instill that into people that, you're not going to get in trouble? Maybe you will, but it's not like you're going to come in and tell me a problem, I'm going to fire you and then I'm going to fix it. Like, we're going to work together, continue to be collaborative. We're going to fix this. What else did you do other than just pure action to like get people to understand, like, this is the way we're going to operate. This is the way we're going to solve problems together.
I celebrated my failures. I think sometimes, I try to kind of laugh about them when they're not, if it was okay to do that, kind of tease about myself or, make it okay. Like, see, this happens. And then I would say that just trying to be a human, I got to know them on a personal level. I mean, I knew every single person's spouse, their kids, their grandkids, their pets. Connecting with them on just a regular person level helps kind of build the I don't know, just builds a bridge that I'm just a normal person, and that was something that it wasn't always like that. And so that was really important to me, is to really be just the normal person. I had team members that would text me out of, for whatever and ever reason. And I think that those are tiny little actions that go a long way, because we were a pretty small group of people, and, leaning into that helps people understand. It helps get to the point where you can lean on them when you really need something, and then they know it's mutual.
Yeah, relationships are important, and people, want to be seen. They want to
Yeah.
know that, you care about them as real people, even if they're just, employees. So Molly, after 20 years, time for a change.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we don't have to get in why, but you did make a change, and you, in the midst of a second career. Tell us about that and sort of what you're doing, subsequent to your 20 years of the family business.
Yeah. Well, really what I've been doing is really taking my 20 years of experience, and I know that what I did there was a ton of value. It was needed for us to stay, to stay relevant as an organization. And so, I decided there's plenty of other businesses that need that kind of guidance, but they don't need it on a full, the full capacity. And so being able to go and connect with people where they're at, understand the challenges. I've seen, I will never say I've seen it all, but I've seen a lot, in 20 years in one organization, and being able to bounce around and learn the different challenges. I'm able to transfer some of that knowledge and skill set, and just be another set of eyes for the people that need that. And they're maybe just thinking, hey, I don't know where to go for this type of help. We don't have the budget for a full-time person, or live in small town, whatever state. We don't have access to that type of team member.
Yep.
And so to really just help bring larger experiences more broadly, that's what I've been doing. I started in saying yes to about anything. And, like when you're trying to find clients that need work, it's like I told myself, I'm just going to say yes and figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's been it's over 2.5 years, almost 3, that I've been doing this, and I've slowly been refining where my sweet spot is, and the things that I kind of connect the most with. And of course, there's always the clients and people on the fringe of that it's also about connecting on the same mindset and leadership style and things like that. But I really kind of just working through the almost redoing the same 20 years, maybe faster. That because you look back and go, okay, and then we did this, and then we tackled accounts receivable because people aren't paying on according to their terms, and that really helps with cash flow. And you kind of just first you have to find out what the actual problem is within an organization, and then kind of dust off some skill sets, like, okay, this is how we'll handle it, and then work with them together.
So your title at the moment is Chief Sanity Officer. Explain that.
It's really, business owners, a lot of times things fall on their shoulders, and they're feeling like, not getting sleep. Their business they've hit a crossroads of some sort, and they're just driving themselves bonkers, but stuck and not really knowing where to turn. And I think that's where I've had plenty of sleepless nights like that. I know that feeling where you wake up at 2 a.m. and you just can't stop the cycle of the latest thing that you just can't solve, knowing that they need a sounding board, knowing that they need an outlet for trying on a different idea for size. And you can't always share that with your team members, because when you're still in ideation mode, you need a little bit of like, well, I can't go to my team and say, I don't really know anything, but we have to try something. You can, but sometimes that can create more fear than it helps. And so, being able to bring a C-level presence and help them through some of the madness that they're facing alone, and just be someone that they can count on to help work through it.
And when you sit down with those business owners, what is the first thing you sort of sit down and say, this is where we're going to start? Like, what is that? What does the process look like?
Well, the first thing is, a lot of times I'll ask them, do you have a starting point? If, like if they have something they want to tackle, then, and they just need an extra set of hands, then fine. A lot of times they know their symptoms, but they don't know like the source of the problem. So a lot of times what we'll do is we'll just start looking through the financials, the balance sheet and the P&L both can tell a story. And usually, you start looking through that and kind of circle the big things that look like they probably are problems. And then, so I do that on my own at first, and then schedule a meeting with them and just kind of start asking some questions to understand, can you tell me about this? And usually there's a little bit more to that story. And so having to understand their particular things that go on within their business. And then over time, you have to take little bites at a time, and really just kind of try to pinpoint where's the main source of their angst. A lot of times it shows up in tight cash flow or tight profitability.
Yep.
And they're usually pretty hand in hand, but you can be wildly profitable and not have any cash. They don't have to be, but it just depends on what symptoms they're experiencing. And then you kind of just start find the top 2 to 3 things that you can hit a home run on. And then that starts to build trust when you solve a big problem that they hadn't been able to put their finger on.
Do you find that a lot of business owners don't really understand where the anxiety is coming from? They sort of, they know it's there, but they don't know what the problem is?
Yeah, all the time. So that's definitely the case. And a lot of times what we find is they have a really solid controller who is really, really good at making sure all the numbers tie out and all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. But that controller is very backward looking, and they're missing someone to help them look forward. And so, those are the ideal clients for me, because I'm not really I'm the least accountant that there is out there.
And you're right. A lot of business owners don't have that. Like, put the pieces together. Like, this is my business, this is my numbers. They don't tie together in my head. Your dad was a good example of it, right? We'll just sell our way out of it. Because what's in his head and what was on paper maybe didn't align that well with each other, but it's fine. We just keep moving. And I guess, that's a great little circle right there. It went from, pulling your dad in and saying this is what it is, and now helping the business owners do it as well. Do you run into situations where a lot of these business owners will push back and they'll be like, no, that can't be the problem?
Sometimes. And then it's just a matter of, if it's a hard, no, we're not going down that path, then fine. But a lot of times I'll still kind of keep my eye on that and look for signs to either prove or disprove my theory, so to speak. And, I think that's one of the things that I think I'm pretty good at is not getting married to a solution. And it's like, if there's only one answer to every question, then you're missing the flexibility to solve it in a different way. And so if there's a hard no, I'm not going to focus on that, then I'll usually go chase something else. And if it keeps, if life keeps taking you back to that being the source of the problem, then, we can't ignore that either. And I just have to figure out a better way to communicate it.
Do you find in the work that you do that, you find a problem, but do you also pick up sometimes that it's maybe a behavior or a belief that the owner has that's creating that problem? And how do you deal with those situations?
You kind of have to have a yes is the answer. And how I've dealt with it is a little bit of a drip campaign. It's like, you're not going to solve it all in one conversation. Like, usually I'll start to just kind of float some of the observations in, kind of take some temperatures, see how much pushback. And again, being really good at watching body language. And if there's an agitation that comes in, then I'll kind of, take a step back, give some breathing room, and come back at it, a day, a week, a month, whatever later. But, people have to be willing and able to hear the information. Almost always they actually do know it's the problem. They're just really trying to find something else to blame.
Yeah, and those are the tough ones, right? When people, they do know it, but they don't want to believe it, and they're trying to find another answer. I mean, one, it's totally inefficient, right? It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
you know the answer. And I've
Yeah.
had that conversation with people like, you know what the problem is. Can we
Mm-hmm.
just fix the problem? You come from a family business. A lot of time it's a family member that you need to get rid
Yeah.
of it. And, those things can be tough. How do you help those people just push through those problems? How do you help them see through it and understand that there can be a better way? You can get the pressure off of it. I guess in extreme cases, be like, hey, this maybe pulling the plug is the right answer yet. Like, how
Mm-hmm.
do you have those again? Like, I'm asking you a lot about having conversations and difficult ones, but this is a key one in what you're doing right now. Is how do you have these conversations with people to help them get out of their own way,
Mm-hmm.
focus on the problem, not get into the blame game, and just look towards a solution?
A lot of times I'll find that even offering a couple options for how to act, like, well, we can do this, we can consider doing this or this. And there's a little bit of ownership in, okay, I get to pick one. I get to be
Mm-hmm.
involved in the decision. Because a lot of times that is the scariest part, is letting go of the decision. And then they'll get to put a little bit of their spin on it. It's very rarely one of, this one or that one. It's kind of a blend. But for them to be able to hear, okay, here's this, here's that. And then let's also talk through what happens if we don't do anything. And sometimes that, if they're okay with whatever that outcome is, it's their business. I
Mm-hmm.
can't care more than they do.
Yep.
But my role is to make sure that they understand this is an active, conscious decision that you're making to not act. And the worst thing that can happen is X or Y. And
Mm-hmm.
so just to kind of help make sure that they know that this is a choice, even if no action, it's still a choice.
Yeah, it's gonna always be. There's some tricky ones, and I
Mm-hmm.
like the idea of coming back to going like, are you okay with the outcome
Mm-hmm.
if we don't do something? And that's a good way to spin it, because sometimes people are like, I don't want to do it because I don't want to change, but the outcome is you're going to continue to be stressed. Like, in worst case scenarios, like, oh, you had a mini heart attack. Like, do you want to do that again? Like, are you okay with that happening again? Like,
Right.
getting down to the real, like, well, this is the outcome if we don't do it. This is the effect it could have on your life, on your business, on the people around you. Sometimes, that is great advice on a way to just really push it through to people. Like, we don't have to, but this is all will happen. I think, yeah, that's great advice on people, just to have those tricky conversations where people don't want to change even when they know they need to. One of the hard things, though, is showing people how your advice and changes and their hard work to implement those changes is actually having a real measurable effect. And you obviously have a great example, like with your dad, not understanding numbers, giving him some pictures. How do you approach it with these business owners to show them the change to their business, the change to the outcomes? How do you help them, tangibly feel those changes in their businesses?
Again, I think that you start building a bit of a report card, and a lot of times it starts with one or two numbers
Mm-hmm.
that's why they brought me in.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we just start a cadence of reporting, here's where the numbers are, and then talking through what are the things that we're trying, that we're doing, that we're whatever. And eventually those actions show up in the numbers. Sometimes it's aggravating and agonizing that it takes a long time to turn a big ship, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, then instead of showing the results, showing, something else that's measurable,
Mm-hmm.
that here are the actions that we're taking that we know will show up in results later. But, say for example, accounts receivable. If you have a giant past due balance, that you have bad processes in place, it's going to take you're going to have to address the old receivables, but also prevent new ones from getting in there. So there's a couple different tracks that you need to focus on. And so kind of helping walk the owners through the process that's happening, so they know that and trust that something is going on, even if they can't see it in the numbers yet. So keeping them in, like, a part of the conversation as much as they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they say, oh, just do your thing, okay, that's fine. But I always invite them to the conversations until they politely decide to step away.
Great. Molly, what is your most satisfying part of your job as a chief sanity officer? What helps you get up in the morning and keep doing it?
I just love the aha moments. And it's, I tend to be more of an educator by nature. Like I'm a learner, so I kind of maybe mistakenly, but I sometimes assume that helps other people know. If they know and understand why we do things or why things happen, then they're better equipped for the future and making sure that things happen properly. So, but I love once I've kind of tackled something, wrestled it to the ground, and then presented either the findings or the thoughts on it, and like just seeing the other person's eyes light up with like, I get it. And I just love that, because then, that's something I can never take that away from them. They own that knowledge and understanding now. And, I get to be a part of getting that into their wheelhouse. And now they can take that, and usually where they take it is far better than I would have gotten on my own, for sure. So it's like, it's just a starting, little seedling, and then the people that I'm working with, they make it grow.
That's what's great. That the moments of success, and especially when the people figure it out themselves, that is always a good feeling, and it would help me keep going. So that's a great way to do it. Molly, as you're busy with this new career, what are your short-term goals for yourself?
My shortest goals, I have goals to try to create within my team. So at Alta CXO, we're a team. So up until this point, they've been fairly singular focused, and we're fairly new as an organization. And I'm looking for ways to more of a drop-in executive team. Like right now, I'm a drop-in single, but some of the, like the smaller or startup community businesses, they hit a plateau with the people that helped get them off the ground. But I think that we as Altus, if we banded some of our different people together, we have, HR, we have accounting, we have technology, marketing, almost, you go to a restaurant, you get a mix 'em platter, or you pick three or whatever. Like, I think that there's something there where we can create a drop-in exec team that can help get them off the plateau that they're on and get them to the next level. So that's one of my 2025 thoughts. It's really pretty. It's still in an embryo state.
Yeah, I mean, small businesses sometimes need that, right? They need 4 hours a month maybe with the CFO and 2 hours with the marketing person, and one person who's just like all about the strategic plan and just making sure they're stick on goals. Like, that'd be great. Sometimes people can do it all at once, but most of the time you want to hear from different voices, other people with different experience. So that's a great goal. Good luck with be able to pulling it out. And
Thank you.
looking at your website, and I can see the structures. There's pieces there, so I can see how that could be a great goal to work towards.
Yeah,
that's great. Let's go a little bit backwards now again, and I want to, you went to this, you had this job for 20 years, this career, and you became a president, and you sort of touched on it along the way, but you were clearly a leader in the business. What quality that you have that were able to set you up to be a good leader, to be able to grow in the business as much as you did? Great.
I think some of the qualities that I have is I'm a lifelong learner, I love a good life lesson. And I think that there are lessons around every corner. And so, always seeking some sort of learning that can be applied in real life and within an organization. And so I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of just observing. And so I think that's one quality. And then another one, I'm competitive. Like, I like to win. And winning isn't quite it. I like to prove that things can be done that seem impossible. And it's a lot more competitive. It almost sounds like there's a winner and a loser, but I'm a challenge seeker. And so I think that's one of the qualities that it's like, if somebody says it's impossible, it's like, move over, let's figure this out. We can, that dead end it's more of a U-turn than a dead end.
Yeah, and I like the term competitive. It just means that you've got an eye on a prize. Doesn't necessarily you're the winner, but it does mean that you're hyper-focused on that is what the definition of success for me, my team, my organization is going to be. And I'm going to be competitive to the point that we're going to meet that vision that I have in my head. So I think it's a great way to explain it.
Yeah. As long as it's used for good, absolutely.
For sure. Obviously, we can all get competitive. And the negative, I can see that when I play board games with my kids at times. But
Me too.
when you use it in the positive sense to drive a business forward,
Yeah.
I think it's a great way to explain, better than the word driven, right? Driven means so many things to so many different people. So I like these competitive. If I was a new leader coming in today and I've just been shoved into a position of leadership, what advice would you have for me?
Go to where the people are, meet them, talk to them, try to do your best to understand what their actual challenges are. And that might take more than a single conversation for them to actually open up. So form a connection and listen and observe and celebrate what they bring to the table a lot more than anything that you might think that you brought to the table. Your job is to help bring out the best in others. And so digging for their superpower is really what the magic of being a good leader is.
Yeah, great advice. Listen to people, understand their skill set, and like you've done in your career, use that information wisely and make use of people's strengths to your advantage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Really good advice. Lots of good advice you've shared with us today, but what's the best advice you've ever received?
There's two sides to every story. And I think that served me very well, because often when there was something that wasn't quite right, I made it a point to understand what's the flip side of that. And I did it consistently, asking others, tell me about this. Can you help me understand? And usually there was a genuine, there was a genuine interest in trying to do the right thing. And then it just maybe needed a little bit of refining. And so, but if you only listen to the first person that got to you, then it kind of creates, a fear that, I got to race to make sure that I tell my story first. And then that doesn't create a good long-term team environment.
Yeah, I love that advice. It's also, making sure that your opinion on a situation is balanced as well, because, in most cases, there's a little bit of right on both sides, right? And if you can bring those rights together, you're probably going to get a better outcome than just listening to one side of the party.
Yep, exactly.
Molly, on Party Conversations, I'd love to learn a little bit more about people, just like who they are as people, outside of the business space. You've obviously shared family business, Iowa, small town, 3 daughters. Is there anything else you'd like to share about your personal life with us so we get a better understand who Molly the person is?
Sure. I'm really, really close with my family, my kids, even to my sister's side of the family. We have a giant group Snapchat that our kids' friends even know about how active it is, because we're always sending just jokes, sometimes life lessons, sometimes just funny random things. But we work really hard to stay connected and just have good laughs and actually some good, I don't know, life lessons that can help us be better people.
No, that sounds amazing. I struggle to keep up just with my family WhatsApp groups, so all power to you guys to pull off the Snapchat channel. That's really incredible. That's really nice. Molly, I appreciate your time on Party Conversations. We like to end with some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
So I have 5 questions for you. If you're ready, I will fire away.
Let them go.
What would if you were on death row, what would your last meal be?
Baked potato.
Just straight up baked potato?
Well, with butter and salt and pepper.
So your last meal, you can throw in whatever there's on.
Okay, well, probably a steak then too.
Love it. Do you prefer the mountains or the ocean?
Ocean in the winter and mountains in more the fall type weather.
That's a great answer. I love that answer. What is a quality you appreciate in a good friend?
Just authenticity.
That's a good one. Do you have a favorite book that you recommend to people?
Good to Great by Jim Collins. My favorite.
I love it when it comes out so quick, because then it's not, that's real.
Yeah.
Last question. You're stuck on a deserted island. You can bring on any 3 items you like. What would they be?
Sunscreen, probably 3 items. A book, probably Good to Great. And I guess it would depend on it. I'm assuming there's a good place to live, and the real answer should probably be water or something like that. But assuming I could survive.
This is your made up world. It could be a 5-star hotel and you're the only person there.
Yeah, sunscreen, a book, and a beach towel.
Perfect. I love it. Molly, thank you so much for your time on Party Conversations. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Good to see you.
And with that, we ended another Party Conversations. Thank you for joining us in this journey of learning and inspiration. Today we've gained insight from our guest and taken another step towards understanding the diverse tapestry of leadership in business and accounting. Remember, each conversation is a step towards the positive transformation of business leaders. We hope our discussion has given you valuable takeaways to apply in your own career and life. Don't forget to subscribe to Pro Conversations on YouTube and Spotify so you never miss an episode. We'd also love to hear your thoughts and experiences, so connect with me on social media channels. I'm most active on LinkedIn and would love you to join the conversation. Join us next time for more engaging stories, advice, and conversations that matter. Until then, keep striving for excellence, embracing growth. Thank you for listening, be kind, and goodbye from Pro Conversations.